I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
You're here. But are you here? You go to Hawaii in your head all the time. During meetings, in the car, Hawaii is on the mind. But when you're ready to go, there's Expedia, the one place you go to go places. Flights, hotels, vacation homes, cars. You can save when you bundle or book as you go and still save. So what are you waiting for? Expedia, the one place you go to go places. Members only. Savings vary.
A place, I got to get this right, for newlyweds and nearly dead. So it was traditionally a retirement community where people go on their honeymoons because it's so beautiful.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams.
Welcome to Remote Roundup, where each month you'll get a highly curated list of the latest and greatest from the world of remote work and long-term travel, including insanely helpful tools and resources, need-to-know trends, destinations worth spending time in, and plenty of insight into what it really means to live and work around the world. And we do it all with a dose of humor, or at least we try. I'm Janessa, Partnerships Manager here at Zero to Travel, and I'm a slow traveler working remotely who took an adult gap year 6 years ago and never returned to a conventional life. And fun fact, I have a weirdly specific memory about when I listened to certain podcasts for the first time. So when I was working on a yacht, I listened to probably the whole back catalog of Zero to Travel. And now if we ever pull an episode out of the archive, I remember like what part of the boat I was cleaning when I first listened to it. And I have those weird memory associations when I listen to podcasts.
I wish I had your memory, Janessa.
It's not the things I want to remember.
I'm Caitlin, associate producer of the Zero to Travel podcast and a digital nomad for the last 1.5 years who loves to help people do life differently. Fun fact for me, I was finally that person who showed up for their flight on the wrong day.
Oh no. Early or late?
Yeah. Late. I showed up 2 days late. So for anyone who wants a little advice, don't book your flight at 3 a.m. in the morning when you have 40 different tabs open when you're trying to decide which day you want to fly out. Because that's exactly what happened is I just mixed up the day that I booked.
Oh no. I have not yet done that, but I'm sure it happens to all of us.
It happens. All right. Coming your way in this month's Remote Roundup, an underrated productivity habit that we could all use some more of, especially me, alternative solutions for when the traditional systems just don't fit a borderless lifestyle, and our honest take on whether travel is actually cheaper than living at home. And Janessa and I actually may disagree on this a little bit, so this should be an interesting conversation. By the way, before we dive in, just a quick reminder that you can get our free, value-packed, community-driven newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. And today we're going to start it off with where in the world are you, Janessa? Are you still in Canada?
I am still in Canada. I'm about to leave, but I've just been exploring a different part of Canada that was actually a new destination for me. So I was in Victoria, British Columbia, which is on the west coast of Canada on Vancouver Island. And I had never been this far west before. I've been coast to coast otherwise, but it is a beautiful city. I think it's super underrated. It's pretty small. The population is about 100,000 people in the city and about 400,000 in the greater area. So not a large city by any means, but it is very green and close to nature. I loved that there were so many trails for walking and for hiking and to little secluded beaches. And I was there kind of in the fall, and it was quite a mild climate. It doesn't get too cold in the winter, which as someone who grew up with very, very cold winters in Canada, that's a key thing for me. And it is very like active as a city. We talked about cycling in Berlin last week, and I saw so many cyclists in Victoria as well, a lot more than in Winnipeg, where I'm from. Everyone just gets around that way, and overall has a very like environmentally conscious feel of the city. I've never seen so many EV charging stations in a city before, so that was really interesting. The downside of this destination is that you probably do need a vehicle to really explore it and get out of the city. There's a lot to like walk around downtown. It's very walkable, but there's a lot of places that I was very grateful that we had a car. And so I wouldn't say it's necessarily a nomad destination. I did work remotely from there. Internet was great, but you probably wouldn't find other nomad community there. So as a destination, it was really cool. And the reason I actually went there was because of house sitting. So that might be a cool way to explore somewhere that you may not go otherwise. So it actually wasn't me. It was my mom, who is retired, that agreed to this house sitting gig out there of taking care of these cats. And so we lived in someone's home for a few weeks and had full use of their vehicle, which is how we were able to explore more of the island, which is a lot bigger of a place than I thought it was.
Nice. Yeah. I like that you said it wasn't freezing there, because whenever I think of Canada, I think of the cold. And that is the one thing that's holding me back from visiting Canada, at least in the fall time, which I know it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful in the fall. So I definitely want to get out there. Okay. So you said it's not really much of necessarily a digital nomad place, but did you get a feel for the remote work scene at all? If there's any, co-working spaces or kind of what cafe culture is or anything like that?
Yeah, I didn't find any co-working spaces. It definitely is more of just a city where people live. Traditionally, the joke about Victoria was that it was a place, oh, I got to get this right, for newlyweds and nearly dead. So it was traditionally a retirement community where people go on their honeymoons because it's so beautiful. But now there's a lot more mixed age groups. People are raising families there. So I don't know if we can even put it on an up and coming list, but it is a place that I enjoyed working from, even though I mostly just worked from the home we were taking care of, and then when it explored on the evenings and weekends.
Did you use trusted house sitters for that?
We actually didn't. This was a connection that my mom had made a few times ago when she had visited and stayed in these people's Airbnb. Because of the changing laws, it had to be part of someone's primary residence. So they had a walkout basement that she had stayed in. And so she got to know the homeowners kind of the way you used to more on Airbnb when you'd share your space with somebody. So there were kind of two homes in one, and that's how she was able to stay there. And so she got to know them, and they said, well, we need someone to take care of our cats. Do you want to come back? So this is actually her second time doing it. And I'm encouraging her to kind of get out there and do more of these house sitting gigs now.
So that kind of goes to show it's sometimes about who you know too. You don't have to necessarily use the apps. It's making those connections and reaching out into your network if you want to maybe get some free stays. So that's awesome.
Exactly. So last time we talked, you were in Berlin, and the time before that you were in Bosnia. Give us an update, Caitlin. Where are you now? Where are you headed?
Where am I headed? I don't know. So I am back in Sarajevo, Bosnia. I decided to come back here after Berlin just to kind of reintegrate after the breathwork facilitation training that I did when I was in Berlin. So I have just been hanging out here. Not too much has gone on. Sasha, one of our previous guests on the podcast, actually drove through here with his family. I think they are maybe kind of van lifing it through the Balkans right now. We didn't get to meet up, though we tried. I was just very, very busy with work, so it didn't work out, but hopefully we can meet somewhere else because that would have been awesome to meet someone who has been on Zero to Travel in real life, right? Besides that, I had my first experience with healthcare here in Sarajevo. I went to the doctor's this morning and I paid 170 km for the visit. So that included the visit itself, some blood work and tests, and then I got a nice cortisol shot. So that's about 85 euros. I'm going to, submit that to my travel insurance and cross my fingers and see if they'll accept it, basically. But in retrospect, I don't think that is that bad for a doctor's visit, maybe compared to other locations. So if I have to pay it, I'm fine with that. Right now, I am deciding where I want to go next. I can technically stay here a little bit longer if I wanted, but I did give my notice to my roommate that I'd be leaving on Sunday. Right now, we're recording on a Thursday. So that's 3 or 4 days and no location in sight. So I'm really hoping that I will get inspired in the next couple days. I seem to have this thing where I never book my flights or plan too much ahead. Sometimes it works in my favor, sometimes not so much, but I'm hoping it's going to work in my favor this time.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm excited to hear where you end up next. And it's cool that you were able to come back and spend a little bit more time there. It's definitely on my list. So I guess moving on, we are going to talk about a remote work or life tool that we think is worth trying. Do you want to kick us off with what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah. Okay. So this isn't exactly a remote work tool, but we all know how much sleep affects our productivity, right? So, better sleep equals better productivity. And as someone who's been struggling really bad with chronic fatigue, I can't fall asleep, I can't stay asleep, I'm desperately trying to figure out what is wrong with me. One thing that I found that has helped me fall asleep or be able to go back to sleep when the light starts creeping in through the window is an eye mask. And I know how basic and generic that seems, but it has made such a huge difference. When we're staying in so many different accommodation types, like moving from space to space, we don't really know how the blinds and the curtains are going to be in the rooms. I never look at that when I'm looking at the photos on Airbnb. I'm looking at everything else but the curtains. I think from now on I will prioritize maybe a space with some good blinds. But it really does make a huge difference. And I started traveling with this crappy little eye mask, the $2 one that suctions to your face and is super uncomfortable. So I never used it. I upgraded to a bit of a better one. And this one has kind of eye sockets, kind of bulges so that your eyes can move underneath the eye mask. And that's made a big difference too. So yeah, get an eye mask. If you are struggling to sleep, or even if you think that you're sleeping fine, I would definitely get it just to try it out. Sometimes I don't sleep with it on because it's a bit uncomfortable. But yeah, when that morning light starts coming in, I slap that on and I can go back to bed for another couple hours if I feel like it. So don't underestimate these simple little tools for sleep or the importance of sleep.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. We're always looking for these, new technology hacks and stuff, but our bodies just need some basic things and we'll feel so much better. And I also travel with an eye mask. I've had the same one for quite a few years, actually. I keep just buying it again. It's a very simple, cheap, soft fabric. I actually get it from a dollar store here in Canada, and I've had to stock up in case they stop selling this one. And it's just really comfortable. And I've gotten so used to it that I think it definitely helps me fall asleep because it kind of signals to my brain that it's time time to shut off. It's time to sleep. I think I've really ingrained that cue almost too much to the point where I really struggle to sleep without it. Even if it's completely black, I still just need that fabric on my face now. So
That comfort.
that's both exactly. That's both an advantage and a disadvantage. And I've taken it a step further. I also love some earplugs. I've stayed in some locations that can be a little bit noisy, either with the neighbors, maybe the windows aren't so solid. Maybe there's just other kind of noises going on. And I love a good set of earplugs. I don't like the foam ones anymore, actually. I used those for years, especially in like my more backpacking hostel days. Now I love I think silicone ones. I found some from a pharmacy in South Africa that I'm obsessed with. And when I go back, I'm going to stock up on as many pairs of those as I can because they just make such a big difference in helping you stay asleep or fall asleep when there's other things going on. And the other thing that I'll add that maybe seems a little fancy, but I don't think it is I've started traveling with a silk pillowcase. And the reason I originally got it is because I have very curly hair. And so it's better for like frizz and breakage to have your hair against silk than cotton, I guess. And it's supposed to be better for your skin as well. But what I find now is it also is just kind of that like physical cue of comfort when you're going to bed, if you're in a new place, everything's unfamiliar, but that, your pillowcase against your cheek, it just feels like home because you take it everywhere with you. And so, it's the last thing you feel before you go to sleep, first thing you feel in the morning. So I kind of like that for adjusting to a new place and just having that little feeling of home as you're going to bed. So I find that helps as well. And it really does not take up much space at all. It's very thin. It takes up like the same as a pair of socks or two, maybe.
I love that actually. And yes, it does seem fancy at first, but it's really not. It's important to carry with you or have those little things that make you feel comfortable wherever you go. And that really does help you adapt easier. It's similar to, the idea of keeping the same morning routine in the different cities. So you can, continue feeling like yourself and having that routine and that continuous just consistency in general and stability, even in a sense. With the earplugs too, I was so anti-earplug for a long time. And then someone gave me a pair. I don't know why. Someone gave me a pair when I was in Costa Rica, actually, because I couldn't sleep at all. And they helped keep the noise of the damn monkeys every morning, 5 a.m., wailing, these howler monkeys right in our windows. That saved my life. I am using the generic, super cheap earplugs right now, but I do want to upgrade to something like the loop earplugs. I don't know if you've tried those or not, Janessa.
I haven't yet. I've meant to try them.
Yeah, they're on my list. I've been putting them on my Christmas list every year. One day, hopefully, I'll get them, or maybe I'll just, cave and buy them for myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Keeping up the animal noises as well, that, in different parts of the world, there's different animals. I was staying in a place in Mexico that would have cats running along the roof at early hours in the morning, and you could hear them scrambling around and kind of screaming at each other. And we actually stayed in the same building in Bansko, Bulgaria. But did you ever hear the cows first thing in the morning? The cows would sometimes wake me up if I didn't use earplugs.
I love the cows, though. That was my actually like a little comfort thing in the morning somehow. I loved it. I just thought it was so peaceful and cute. But yes, it was. It woke you up with their little bells.
Yeah, I love the cows. All right.
So funny.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast. which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Now, back to the show.
All right, moving on. Trends to know. So this is something that I don't personally know a lot about. I'm not quite there yet myself, but I have heard a ton of people talking about this in the nomad community. It just keeps getting, a bigger and a bigger of a hot topic to talk about. And that is alternative tax and residency solutions for nomads. So Janessa, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, like you said, this has been a huge topic of conversation. We were both recently at Bansko Nomad Fest this year, and I think I attended 3 or 4 talks and workshops on this topic of conversation. So the important thing to note is that residency is not the same as citizenship, which is not the same as where you do your banking. There's all separate systems. And so nomads are realizing that the traditional tax systems don't necessarily fit a borderless lifestyle. So I'll share a little bit about what I have heard. I haven't pursued any of these options myself yet either. So we should throw a little disclaimer in this. This is not legal or financial advice. We are just sharing what we've seen trending, and maybe this can inspire some further research for yourself if some of this catches your attention as a potential option. So, like I said, the traditional systems don't necessarily fit this borderless life. There's now digital nomad visas, which have tax and residency implications. There's a whole growth of remote work in general. And I think also a lot of people are adopting this kind of plan B mindset based on different political or economic instability throughout the world, that they kind of just want other options of either where their company is set up or where they're storing their money, where they're paying taxes, where they have the ability to live either now or in the future. And so one of the starting points for this topic of different tax and residency solutions is flag theory. So that'd be a good thing to look up and see what that might mean for you. But essentially, it's just having different countries for all of these different systems. So putting your flags in different places for your residency and for your address and for where your company is set up and your banking. So I thought that was very interesting, and I'm hearing just a lot more conversations about this in general, both in person and online. So some of the strategies that I've seen lately, I'll throw out a few examples. Again, not a recommendation, just look it up and see if it may work for you, is residency in Paraguay. And this is a really interesting one. I actually have a friend who just obtained her residency about a week ago. So that's why this was fresh on my mind again. So I think the reason for Paraguay is it's kind of an easier system to get into, and it has a territorial tax system, which means that you only pay taxes on income earned in that country. So if you're earning taxes from somewhere else, you're not taxed on it. So another one that kind of fits this criteria, although I think it may be changing, is Panama. And so this is somewhere where you would set up your residency, but not necessarily live there. And I think Paraguay has a pretty low physical presence requirement. Like, for example, you don't have to live there a certain number of months out of the year to have residency there. So I thought that was a really interesting one that has popped up on my radar recently. Other places I've heard of in the EU would be places like Portugal, Malta, Cyprus. People are setting up either residencies or companies there. Caribbean, I think we've all heard about different island nations that people can gain second citizenships through investments. So that might be a pricier option. If you're going through all of this to try to save some money on taxes, that might be a different goal as opposed to getting a second passport or a second residency option. In terms of where to set up a company for non-US citizens, a lot of people set up their LLC in the US. And then Estonia also has a e-residency program. But I think it's important to note that that is different than a physical residency. It doesn't give you permission to live there. It's just a place to to set up a company. And then the last kind of one I'll talk about is banking solutions. So, there's a lot of online banks that we use, but in terms of a physical in-person bank, the one that keeps coming up is the country of Georgia as a popular option. And I think that's because non-residents can open accounts pretty easily. You can get multi-currency accounts. So I'm really always curious talking to people who have done these different solutions. And so, for example, as a Canadian, I could go set up my residency in Paraguay, set up an LLC in the US and get paid that way, do my banking in Georgia, all of these different options. But I do understand that a lot of our listeners are from the US. And for US, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Caitlin, it's different options, that taxes are not that territorial-based system that I mentioned with other countries, that it's based on your citizenship. So maybe you've heard this stat before, that US is one of only 2 countries in the world that is taxed based on citizenship. So no matter where your income is earned, you are liable for it as long as you're a citizen. So that's why, again, citizenship is different than residency. And I find that a really interesting thing to look into. One of the options I have heard kind of mixed things about is the foreign earned income exclusion, the FEIE. A lot of my friends from the US have taken advantage of this, also known as kind of the 330 days abroad rule, where if you spend majority of your year outside of the country, that you get a tax exemption up to a certain amount. But again, look into that. I've also heard mixed things about the efficacy of that as a long-term solution, and, could come back to bite you 10 years from now. I don't really know. So just, I guess the point of this trend is that there are more solutions out there. And kind of a theme of all these workshops and talks that I attended was that, like, there is a solution for everybody. If you're not happy with what your current residency and tax situation is, there is a lot of information out there about how you can potentially change it or try something new. So I don't know if this is something that I would try in the near future. At the moment, I'm still paying taxes in my home country. I know it complicates things if you do want to live somewhere longer than sometimes 90 days, or 183 days is often the threshold. So that's just something to kind of look out for when you spend longer in a place. Any thoughts on that?
Whew. Yeah.
Sorry, I know that was a lot.
So that 330 day rule, I will be, I think, looking into that this next tax season, because as far as I understand, it's not calendar year 333 days. It's just
like a rolling period.
330 day, a rolling period. So I'm thinking that I should maybe be good this year, but it kind of sucks that I have to say, hey, parents, not going to come see you so long this year because I don't want to pay taxes. But maybe they can just come visit me in another country. Paraguay, I've been starting to hear more about some of the events that I've attended. There has been people there who their whole business is helping people figure out Paraguay residency for their taxes. I think you're right when they said there's a pretty low requirement of how long you actually have to spend there, because I know one of the questions that continued to come up was, well, is Paraguay even really a place that I want to be? Is there much to do? What's the nomad scene like? It sounds like maybe because of this residency thing, there are some expats and nomads there a little bit, a very small community, but it seems like it's just getting its start. Yeah, as far as the Georgia thing, that is incredibly popular. And I guess the one thing that I have to add is I think it's really important when you're looking into these things to not rely on your friend's advice or what worked for your friend, because this is really individualized, which I didn't necessarily realize, because I did start, I guess, learning about this a little bit. And then I got overwhelmed when I realized I couldn't just say, hey, what's the best place for a US citizen to do this? And then they say, oh, the answer is Georgia. Okay, cool. It was, oh no, I really had to dig into so many little things to figure out the best thing for me. And I'm just not mentally ready to figure that out for myself yet. So yeah, definitely make sure that you're doing your research, you're talking to the right people, and, not taking all, your advice from a Reddit thread that you find on the internet, or ChatGPT, or your best friend who, disguises themselves as a tax person.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make, that I would, if I ever went down this path, would definitely get some professional help, making sure that I did everything correctly. And yeah, I've been hearing more and more stories. So now at least I could get referrals from friends of maybe which companies or individuals helped them. And it is important to remember that it's not a one size fits all. There isn't one package of like, all right, you can set up your life here, right? It goes back to the flag theory of having different countries serve different purposes, and that there isn't really an all-in-one easy solution to that. And it really depends on, what you do for work and where you want to be in the future. So just something to kind of get your thoughts going on, of maybe it just doesn't have to be the way you always thought it needed to be, that, the world is becoming a lot more global, and in some ways that can be a bit of an equalizer for different opportunities, but that ultimately the passport you were born with does dictate a lot of these. All right, so I know that maybe that was a little bit heavy, but let's move on now to our real talk section. So I don't know about you, but when people back home say things to me like, oh, you're so lucky you get to travel so much, or I don't know how you can afford it, that I don't know, that has me feeling a certain type of way.
It's not as unattainable as people think, right? I think it's more about what are you willing to sacrifice or give up or swap? Like, what changes are you able to make? I know for me right now, living abroad is 1,000% cheaper than living at home for multiple reasons, which we can get into. But yeah, it's really about, what changes do you want to make in order to live the lifestyle that you want to live?
Yeah, like we often share different examples on this show about how people make travel more a part of their lives. And I think one of the most difficult things would be having a home base and traveling a lot. And so we've both chosen to not have a home in our home countries, that we can then allocate all of our money towards this traveling full time or living abroad full time. And in a lot of ways, I definitely feel like it could be cheaper than, for example, what my friends here spend on their just mortgage or rent alone every month is often what I can spend in the entirety of my lifestyle. So I kind of thought of this topic as two different ways of things that we don't spend money on as full-time digital nomads to our advantage. Like, for example, a mortgage or rent, as well as intentional choices that we do make to spend on travel instead. Because you can't have it all. It is about choices and sometimes a little bit of a sacrifice. So what's your thought on that initially?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, like you mentioned, you said, your rent and your mortgage advantage, that we're not paying that unless you are deciding to keep your home when you travel. But we are giving up things like, I know you've mentioned to me before, like beauty, we're giving up, maybe regular trips to, I don't know, the salon. We're giving up a lot of those little comforts, I guess. So you need to kind of really determine. I think for me, travel is sometimes cheaper, and I can get into this more later, but I think travel is sometimes cheaper because we are giving up a lot of things, not necessarily just because rent is cheaper, because in places like Europe, and depending on where you live, if you live in the States or, if you're home base, like you might not be from the States or from Canada, you might already be living in Europe. So it's going to kind of, I think it's very specific to the person, but definitely a ton of advantages, which we can kind of get into.
Yeah, like kind of we already covered the obvious one is housing costs. So I think also when you have a home as a permanent base, all the extra things kind of add up. You are fixing things in your home, you're upgrading things, you're decorating it, you're always kind of buying more household items. Whereas I think we keep it very bare bones when we're living in an apartment for a month. We just kind of, buy the food and toiletries and cleaning supplies that we need. And it's not a lot of like extra lifestyle things. So I think costs of living in a home can really sneak up on you, especially if things break unexpectedly, whereas we don't have those same responsibilities living in somewhere temporarily. And the other one kind of in this category is like paying double accommodation. Like we mentioned, having a home base and traveling from there, then you're kind of paying for that night twice. Whereas I think you do the same. I often will kind of sneak in my shorter kind of holidays in between destinations. So I'm not paying twice. It's still just my accommodation cost. So maybe I spend 2 months somewhere, I spend a long weekend somewhere in between, and then another month, for example. So I think that also helps, that it's not so much going away on holiday. And I think also our holidays are a little bit different. Like maybe people think that we're on vacation all the time, which is absolutely not the case. You and I both work.
I couldn't tell you the last time that I had a holiday. I don't know. What is a holiday?
Right? So I think we do kind of like mini getaways, and I think we're always sneaking in kind of micro adventures as we're exploring the places that we're living in. But you kind of touched on this earlier, it is quite a difference of living abroad, living somewhere for a month or 2 or 3 versus constantly bopping around. You know, when people say full-time travel, maybe they mean you're in a different bed every few nights. And that could be a very different cost compared to what we're talking about as a more kind of sustainable digital nomad lifestyle.
Yeah, I think what you said about like even like decor and furnishings and repairs and those small costs, that sort of got me thinking a little bit when I was writing my notes down for this episode. Because, yeah, I mean, you have even like, depending on if you're renting or owning a home, it's like you have homeowners insurance, you have, or renters insurance, you have, oh my God, there's probably 50 other kinds of insurance that people have for things. Other like small payments, you're paying for garbage every week, you know, on top of the obvious water bills and things. So yeah, there's a ton of different things that you are not paying for when you are traveling abroad. But on the other hand, there are a ton of things that you're paying for when you're traveling that you might not be paying for when you're at home.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think also like a vehicle is one of those other more expensive categories. And I was recently talking to somebody who was paying their car insurance for the year, and it was like $1,200. And they're talking about how they need to go for an oil change, and those things kind of add up. And I haven't owned a vehicle in, I think, about 7 years now. And I just think of like all the money I've saved by not owning a car, actually. So even if you're not making monthly payments on it anymore, like mine was fully paid off, gas is really expensive. So it also depends if you're renting a car in places you go. But in terms of some of those those expenses you have while traveling that you may not have at home, I think transportation is also an obvious one. But I think overall, whether I'm doing public transportations or like Uber around, I don't know that I've ever spent as much in a month as I used to on my car. So you do have kind of the longer distance travel costs like flights, long distance buses and trains. I think on a month to month basis, though, my transportation costs are lower, especially if I'm in a place that is more walkable. You know, when I visit home, I have to drive absolutely everywhere because it's not a walkable city.
Yeah, I think if you're comparing transportation to transportation, accommodation to accommodation, it definitely seems cheaper to live abroad. But I also think it depends on what your strategy is, right? I'm going to take the bus when I'm traveling versus take the Uber, because those Ubers will add up in some countries. I liked to take the Bolt scooters in Thailand, which were incredibly cheap. I would actually take those just to go on a ride for some fun, not even to use for actual transportation. Yeah, I think when you're comparing apples to apples, things seem cheaper, but then also, you know, maybe you're not spending so much money on transportation. So you're putting what you would have spent for transportation into something else. Maybe it's to upgrade your accommodation in the place that you're staying, or maybe it's to, you know, go do that excursion or go on that hike or go on that tour that you wouldn't have been able to necessarily do because it was a little more expensive. So I think it's about your strategy. And, you know, if you're putting that money that you're quote unquote saving into spending somewhere else, you're maybe not necessarily saving as much money abroad as you think. If your goal is to save money, that's another thing. Is your goal to save money while you're traveling abroad, or is it to have fun and enjoy the lifestyle and put your money towards those kinds of experiences? So I think it's just really important to kind of consider all of that when you're actually making your plan to, become a nomad or to add more travel to your life.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point you bring up of, whether you do have a monthly line item for saving and investing, and if that's something that you pause while you're traveling full time versus living at home, or how much extra kind of disposable income you do have. I definitely reallocate a lot of that money into travel experiences. I think I go out to eat a lot more when I am abroad. When I come home, I actually don't really at all. It just doesn't really feel worth it to spend so much money on a meal out. I'd rather just kind of catch up with my friends and then have some really great food the next time I'm out of the country. So I think that is important to balance those trade-offs, and some things maybe do feel like a sacrifice. So we've kind of alluded to that. Maybe we can talk about some of the things that you and I kind of give up in our lifestyle in order to be able to do the travel experiences we wanted. One of the ones you mentioned earlier was beauty. I think we both are not the type of people that will always like have our nails done and get regular haircuts and things like that. And I think back home, I see a lot of people that are always kind of doing that maintenance, that's important to them, maybe because of the job that they work. And to us, I think that that's less of a priority, and that we see the other places our money could go instead. And maybe we don't feel the need to kind of do those little small, treating yourself things, because we get these amazing weekend experiences that we don't really have to escape from. So do you have other examples of things that you feel like that you sacrifice or you give up in order to spend on travel?
Yeah. So like you said, kind of those going to the salon, the beauty thing is definitely one of them. That is starting to change for me a little bit now that I've been traveling more. I've been wanting more of that, but it's been a sacrifice that I've had to make. Yeah. So I am right now, I'm kind of in this very strange kind of transition period with my priorities are starting to shift as I'm realizing what makes me feel stable and comfortable and what I need in order to maintain this lifestyle. So I think that's kind of why my opinions about this kind of topic, why we sort of have differing opinions too, is just kind of like where I'm at in life. One thing that I have given up to travel, for instance, is a lot of like my health maintenance things. I have a lot of health issues that really require eating a certain way or certain lifestyle changes that have been hard to do on the road. It's very expensive to get some of the things that I need. I just paid $200 for international shipping here to Bosnia to get some kind of like supplemental like medicine that I have been putting off for forever because it's been very expensive, but I've been prioritizing my travel over my health. But I'm realizing I need to start prioritizing that health a little bit more. I'm giving up the comforts of having, with the health thing, having a kitchen that has a blender and has these things that I actually need. And I used to think that that sounded very basic, like, oh man, like you're traveling, like you can't give up a blender, like give up the blender. But either when you're traveling, you learn that you don't actually need these things and you become more of a minimalist. But then at the same time, you kind of realize what those little things are that really would add value to your life while you're traveling. So that's kind of like the biggest thing that I'm kind of realizing about what I'm giving up right now.
Yeah. And this is why I think it's nice to have this real talk and these honest conversations about what our priorities are and how they shift, because that is quite a serious thing of, sacrificing your health to be able to travel and have these experiences. And I liked what you said about, being a minimalist. That kind of made me think of another one in terms of what we do carry with us. I'm quite a minimalist in terms of the clothing that I pack. So I really don't keep up with fashion trends or seasonal trends. I'll try to buy a few key items that will last me a really long time. And it's not like I can spontaneously just buy a bunch of new clothing because I see it and I want it. I really have to think about, well, if I buy this, that means having to give away something else that is in my bag because I don't have room for both. So I think that this lifestyle kind of forces you before making purchases to decide, is it something that you really want, and kind of takes away that spontaneous spending that I think can be really easy to fall into when you live in one place and you have a whole house to fill if you want to.
Yep. And yet too, even, dining, I'm giving up, there's incredible restaurants that I could be eating at while I'm traveling, but I'm choosing not to in order to save some money. And once again, that goes back to where are you in your, how much income are you making? So a lot of people when they travel, they really enjoy, they prioritize specifically being able to go to the Michelin star restaurants in the city or, eat out all the time. But for me, where I'm currently at, I cook at home constantly. I will go out to dinner intentionally with friends. I couldn't really tell you the last time in the last month. I think actually, no, in Berlin, I went out to eat once. The whole time I was there. And the food scene there
The food
is incredible. I'm 1000% regretting it. I should have prioritized that in that moment. Especially being back in Bosnia where the food is not a plenty, I will say. It's not, my vibe. They don't have, 5-star restaurants here. But yeah, so food is definitely something that we give up, the expensive stuff. And then another thing too, we've talked about the idea of vacationing. We're not going on luxury vacations as we travel in this lifestyle. We might be doing the short kind of looks a little bit more like a vacation kind of thing. But yeah, we're definitely not going luxury in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and I think it's different when, you're living in a place and there's somewhere you can go for a really cool weekend trip that you don't have to spend a lot of money on versus when you live somewhere and you're just, commuting to your job every day and you really feel like you need that escape, especially a seasonal escape. We kind of chase summer, but if you're living somewhere like where I used to in Canada with winter, you really do feel the need to spend your 1 or 2 weeks of vacation time somewhere warm and just relaxing, and you want more of that luxury holiday experience. And I think we don't do that as much because of the lifestyle that we're living in other places.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up. You stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
Now, back to the show.
One thing that I do want to go back to really quick is, when we're talking about accommodation costs, right? Let's say we pay, I don't know, $1,000 in the States for our accommodation. And people say, oh, but it's so much cheaper to get an apartment in Thailand or in the Balkans in Eastern Europe. Great. But I think one thing is people also expect then if they're paying $1,000 or whatever in their country, that maybe they'll pay, $500 in the other country, but then the quality will also be maybe just as good, if that makes sense. Like, I think one thing that we sort of sacrifice at the same time is, yes, we're getting cheaper rent, but it might not necessarily be a luxury apartment unless you do want to pay the price that maybe is closer to what you would pay back at home. So I think it's just kind of understanding that, yes, you might be paying less for certain things, but the quality might differ, which is perfectly fine. But even things like, oh my gosh, your $3 nails in Thailand, which I loved. I felt like a queen on my tiny little budget in Thailand for 3 months. That was amazing. But once again, it's not the same experience as that you would get if you got your nails done somewhere else, So I think just taking that into consideration and realizing that when people say like, oh, it's so much cheaper to live abroad. It's so much cheaper this, it's so much cheaper that. Yes, it is, but it's going to be an entirely different experience, depending on where you're going.
Yeah, it all depends where you're coming from originally, right? So maybe you are spending the same amount, but you get a lifestyle upgrade for that same dollar amount every month, and that's what you prefer, right? And maybe you come from a very high cost of living area. I have friends who, were used to paying $2,000 or even $3,000 a month in rent. Maybe they came from New York or California. So for them, as long as they're spending less than that somewhere in the world, it's fine. They'll book the $2,500 apartment in Cape Town, and that seems like still a good deal for them, and they get quite a luxurious place. Whereas I came from very low cost of living areas that before I started traveling full time, I don't know that I'd ever spent more than $500 a month on rent. I mean, this is quite a while ago again. But so to me, to spend $1,000 somewhere that in my mind should be less expensive, then I am going to go for the lower cost, lower quality apartment. And maybe I'm willing to sacrifice some things to kind of stay within kind of that mental budget that maybe I don't have to stick to that restriction, but in my head that's what it should cost. So we all have different perceptions. And I also really hesitate to say you should go to certain destinations because they are, quote unquote cheaper, because it is just like a lower cost overall. And you want to be mindful of locals that make lower salaries. So of course, the goods and services need to match those salaries that they're making. So I think it's important to be mindful of that as a foreigner coming into these places.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that point. I think that is super important to take into consideration for sure. One last thought that I had before we move on. I also feel like a lot of people when we move abroad, we've sort of touched on this, but for some reason, when we move abroad, we are more willing to give up those comforts, or we are more willing to live in an apartment for 3 months that we wouldn't live in at home, which I think is really interesting because I know I can move back to the States and I technically could go choose an apartment that maybe is in a different part of the city or isn't as updated or things like that. But I don't want to. But when I'm traveling, I'm like, oh yeah, give me whatever and I will be good to go. So I think it's just interesting kind of how our mindset shifts and how our priority shifts when we start traveling, and kind of compared to being at home and being abroad.
Sure. Yeah. And I think also maybe you're willing to have roommates if you're abroad. Whereas like if you're at home living your life, you're going to your job every day, you want to retreat to a space that is yours, have your own place. And that home is kind of more of a comfort thing. Whereas when we're abroad, maybe we're outside of our apartments a lot. Maybe we want to socialize. Maybe we want to live with other travelers to have that social atmosphere that we don't have from going to a traditional workplace. So I think the mindset around what you're looking for in accommodation can be very different. So I'm glad you brought us back to that still.
All right. So Janessa, do you think living abroad is cheaper than living at home after this conversation?
I will still say yes. I do still think that when I look at if I were to rent a place here and have a vehicle, I think that is about the same as I would spend on my whole lifestyle abroad. I think I'd actually have to make a lot more money to be able to move back to Canada. So I do feel like it's cheaper to travel full time, but in the slower way that I travel. I think if I was traveling faster, I would have a different answer. So how about you? What is your verdict on this?
I'm still kind of torn on this one. I think overall, yes, if you intentionally create your lifestyle for this to be cheaper abroad than at home, then absolutely. I think it really depends on where your income is at, and I think for me, my ideal lifestyle right now with my needs and my priorities would have to be me spending a lot more money abroad. But then again, at the same time, that would equate to me spending more money at home probably too. So I do think it's cheaper, but I think it really comes down to intentionality, because you could easily make traveling more expensive if you're also going on all the tours and all the excursions and you're wanting to stay in the more high-end accommodation and this and that and that. So yeah, I just think it's important to take that into consideration. But overall, yeah, I think it's cheaper if you do it right.
All right. So we agree on some things, we disagree on others. I would love to hear, if you're listening to this, what you think, which is cheaper, full-time travel or living at home. Let us know what you think. Get in touch over on Instagram or send us an email, and maybe they'll still just get you thinking about how you can change your lifestyle to make it more affordable or to be able to upgrade your life in ways that you want, and maybe just open your eyes to other possibilities that are out there.
All right. So I really love that conversation. I guess it is time to move on, though. So we are moving into our Rogue Roundup section, which I am renaming for this episode. Apparently, that's not normal here. So things that are normal in other countries that aren't normal for the US and Canada, since that's where you and I are based. But first, I do just want to note that just because something is normal for us, it doesn't mean that it's better. And our way isn't always the best way. And that's kind of the beauty of travel too, I think, is realizing that our way is not the best way. There's different ways of doing it. And there is no right way for anything. So what inspired this segment was the fact that there are no window screens in any of the windows in Europe. I don't think there's window screens, I don't know, maybe anywhere else that I have traveled, but there are window screens in the States, and I don't understand why there is not in other countries.
I know, like, do we just have more bugs at home? Like, I know in Canada, where I am, for example, we have so many mosquitoes in the summer that you really could not have your window open without a screen. Whereas I have had windows open in Germany, for example, and like bugs definitely get in. But that's so funny that I have noticed that as well. And I actually love those windows that open from the top. I had to look it up. I always called them the Lüften windows.
Yes.
I call them, because in Germany especially, I think other European countries have them too, but in Germany it's very important.
Yeah, my apartment here has them too.
Yeah, you need to lüften, like twice a day. You need to open your window for 10 minutes to clear it out, get fresh air, avoid mold, because there isn't the same, central heating and cooling systems and stuff. And so they are called tilt and turn windows in North America, apparently. So I recently saw some in Canada and I got really excited. I was like, oh, those are like the German Lüften windows. But I actually really like the ones that open from the top, and I wish we had those here.
I love it. And well, I mean, they not only open from the top, but the windows open like doors.
Exactly. Yes, you can open it both ways, which I think is
you can open it any way you want, which I think is so fun. Like, I think if I ever got a house, I want these kind of windows, but I still would like screens in them. It just blows my mind for whatever reason that there's no screens in windows. And also, like, if I'm not on the first floor, well, also I'd want a screen on the first floor. I don't want anyone crawling in my house at night. But also it just gives me anxiety that I could just fall out. Like, there's just no protection. I don't know.
Yeah, true. When I've cleaned the windows and I've been leaning out the window to try to clean the outside of it, I've gotten dangerously close on that windowsill ledge. So, yeah.
If someone is listening and can explain to us the reasoning for this, please get in touch, because I would really love to know, really, for any of these items. Just, shoot me an email, get us on Instagram, whatever. Janessa, is there any that come to your mind?
Okay, the one that always trips me up when I go back home to Canada is toilet paper going in the trash versus being able to flush it in the toilet, because it's very common in a lot of other countries in the world that you cannot flush toilet paper. So once you kind of get into that habit, I find I don't mind. I get used to it. And then I go home and I'm like, wait, where does it go? And I have this moment where I forget. And then I'm like, oh no, we can flush it here. Our pipes can handle this here. So that's just a funny one that came to mind.
It's always so funny when we go home and we get used to these like alternative cultural norms, and we get home and we forget how it works, or we try to do what we were doing in the other country, and then we start getting the funny looks. Yeah. Let's see. Some other things that I think, no dryers. That's a big one for me. Not having a dryer. I've gotten really used to just hanging my clothes out, but man, I miss having nice, warm clothes that aren't hard and crinkly when they dry. I like using the dryer to shrink some of my clothes. I have some clothes that don't fit the same unless they go through a dryer. Like they stretch out so much when I wear them. So I guess I need to choose better items that I'm packing. But no dryer is one. Another one I think is not refrigerating eggs. Like at the grocery store, sometimes there's refrigerated eggs, but a lot of them aren't. It's normal in the States to see non-refrigerated eggs, let's say at a farmer's market or something like that, but that's still not the standard. And everyone still seems to put them in the fridge, thinking like they still have to go in the fridge at some point, when I don't think they actually do. So those are another two that come to mind for this topic.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the dryer, because I'm actually used to not drying my clothes in a dryer anymore. I actually prefer to hang dry them for a lot of the items I have. I feel like it keeps them better, longer. But it's washing your sheets and towels, especially if you only have one set at an apartment. Then you have to plan to do your laundry on like a sunny day. Whereas I get home and I'm like, oh, it's raining, but I can get fresh set of sheets within a few hours, get it back on my bed, like no big deal. So I miss a dryer for that, and having like a nice warm towel. Another one would be having to pay, back to the toilet example, sorry, having to pay for public toilets. I think that's something that we really take for granted in the US and Canada, that, you know, if you have to go, you can just go. Whereas always having to have some coins with you to be able to pay 50 cents or 5 pesos or whatever it is to be able to use a toilet somewhere, and kind of I'll bookmark them on my map when I find a good public toilet or a free one. And it's so exciting to be able to find one.
And sometimes they don't even have toilet paper for you to use, or you have to pay for your own toilet paper. And really what they give you is just like a little tissue, not even like, you know, toilet paper. So you have to be very conscious of how much you're using.
Yeah, it's that reverse culture thing when you come home again. Now, I don't have to always put spare toilet paper in my bag before leaving my home, because I know that public restrooms will have it. And I mean, I don't mind paying where, you know, that is employing someone and they keep it like immaculately clean and maintained. But some of these places where you're paying 50 cents and it's still overflowing and disgusting and they have no toilet paper for you, I don't like that as much.
Mm-mm. No way. All right. A couple other ones. Let's see. Everything being closed on Sundays. That's one. I totally forgot that this past Sunday, totally forgot that everything was going to close. So I basically wound up just fasting on Sunday.
Oh, no.
Because I did not go to the grocery store on Saturday. I had nothing to eat. I had a couple vegetables. So we just did a little bit of a fast day, which I started experimenting with. So it worked out fine. But yeah, everything closing on Sundays is a big thing, which actually I really appreciate things being closed on Sundays. And you notice everyone is outside walking around. Everyone's at the park on Sunday. So they're spending their days a lot differently than being inside. So I think that's a really nice, something that's not normal for us, but normal for other people. Another thing, showers that are not separated from the toilet. We seem to have a lot of bathroom things going on right now.
Oops.
Bathroom culture. If you're not already a digital nomad and aware of this is one of the, I think, the biggest culture shock things is just bathrooms. Yeah, not having a separation from the toilet. Sometimes it's just this huge room and like your toilet is right next to your shower. So like everything's just getting wet. Everything's getting wet. Or there's a little bit of a lip separating the shower from the rest of the bathroom, but it's never quite high enough. So if you happen to take like a long bath or the shower's clogged a little bit, you're totally screwed. The whole thing's going to overflow.
Ugh, yeah. I had an even more extreme version of this when I actually worked on a yacht. And so I had a wet bath where it was a very small bathroom in our cabin that was the shower, toilet, sink, very, very small space. And you had cabin mates. So every time you took a shower, you had to squeegee the entire thing top to bottom so that your cabin mate could use it afterwards, because absolutely everything was soaked. And there was only one little small shelf where you could keep the toilet paper and your toiletry bottles from getting completely soaked as well. So I do not miss that. At least if it's in a big room, it's kind of wet over there. But I know what you mean. I like having it separate as well. Okay, I'll move away from the bathroom talk. Using cash everywhere. There are so many places in the world where cash is still king and you cannot get away with using credit cards. And again, once you get used to it and you just always have cash on you, like I don't mind it. But for example, when I came back to Canada, I needed cash for something. And I was like, I don't ever carry cash in this country. Like I'm not used to that anymore. But as soon as I go abroad, you always make sure you've got enough in your wallet, but not too much. And it's always like a delicate balance of not having too much cash and not having to like keep replenishing before you leave. Like I always try, it's like a game to see how little you can get your cash down to zero before leaving a country.
Yeah, I'm still always amazed and I guess somewhat still shocked when I go to places in Europe and cash is still preferred, because I've become accustomed to that in other places, but like in Europe, not so much. I'm still just like, why? Why?
Yeah, I think it changed a lot with the pandemic. Of some places got card machines when they never had them before, just because of the contactless thing. So I think in the last 5 or so years, it's shifted more from when I first started going to Europe. But yeah, it's funny how that is still such a reality of people just don't really want to use cards in those places.
Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to go through and name some of the other ones on this list before we move on to our next topic. Some of them were meat not refrigerated when you go to buy it. That's something that I've found really common in Asia. So, you know what that's taught me? That we don't have to necessarily refrigerate our meat. I think that might be, I mean, we do have to refrigerate our meat, but I mean like how they serve it. I mean, like, you know, like we have so many USDA rules and stuff in the States that so many other countries are doing it differently. So it's just interesting. I'm curious what the research and what the science is behind that now a little bit, because I've eaten the meat and I've been perfectly okay. To-go soups served in bags is another one. Blows my mind. I love it. It's the weirdest quirk of Asia, and I think it's great. I don't know about hot soup in a bag leaking chemicals into our food. That's another topic for another day, but it's fun. Eating really late at night.
Ooh, that's a struggle for me. Mm-hmm.
I absolutely hate it. I cannot get down with it. I participate in it. I don't like it. Smoking culture and smoking inside. In Europe, it's a huge thing. Coming from the States and Canada too, less and less people are smoking, but I'm not seeing that in other parts of the world, which is really interesting. And the smoking inside, for one, is mind-boggling to me, but it's a culture thing. What else do I have on the list? Paying for grocery bags. Interesting. I have seen that start to become a thing in the States, though. I don't know if you've started to see that in Canada.
Yeah, I think you have to pay for bags here. I've been carrying the same reusable, foldable bag for years and years, so I don't remember the last time I got a new grocery bag that I had to pay for. But
so this doesn't really bother you at all.
No, it's the same anywhere I go.
And the last one is AC and heat. I know I'm having an issue right now with this heat in here is like controlled by the building, and it kicks on like once a day, and I'm sitting here and I'm freezing, and there's nothing I can do about it. So yeah, AC and heat is always differing wherever you go. And that's just something that you got to adjust to. Bring a couple extra blankets and you're all good. But I think that is the full kind of list that I had. I don't know if there's anything that you want to add onto the list real quick, Janessa.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. And like we said, these are not things that are good or bad. You do kind of adapt to the culture that you're in. And I don't know, I thought this was kind of fun to just talk about these different quirks of different places that maybe to them it's not a quirk. It's normal, right? What is actually normal was kind of the theme today. So I'm glad you brought this up.
It's a good kind of exercise too, maybe when you're traveling, if you find yourself thinking if something that you're doing or seeing is wrong, is to maybe kind of take a step back and say, well, why do I think this is wrong? And is it really wrong? Or is it just something that I'm not used to? And why does this make me uncomfortable, you know?
Great point.
So we are moving into our mystery bonus category to wrap this up. So Janessa, I just have one question for you for this episode this time.
I'm nervous. I don't know what's coming. Okay.
It's a good one. So initially I was asked this question when I was on a date. I'm just obsessed with this question. I have started asking everyone this. I think it's a great way to get to know people. It's a great way to get an idea if someone is maybe a little more analytical, a little more creative, more of a planner, more of a, shooting from the hip kind of person. And it's also inspired me just to, when I meet people, just start asking really ridiculous questions instead of asking what kind of music do you listen to? What are your hobbies? And then you answer hobbies with, oh, I like to travel. We all like to travel, you know? So I've been really intentional about trying to ask some of these questions. So are you ready?
I think so. Let's go.
Okay. It's a good one, I promise. If you had a Mary Poppins bag, do you know who Mary Poppins is?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had a Mary Poppins bag, like a Mary Poppins travel bag, so a bag that looks small but was endless, never ending. You can fit absolutely anything into this bag. What 3 things would you bring with you on your travels?
Ooh, this is a cool question. First thing that comes to mind, I would bring a bike, like a bicycle, so I could ride around everywhere. I would love to have my own bike to be able to explore cities. And I used to actually travel with a bike on planes for competitions. And that was such a pain. I would never want to actually do that. So that can go in my bag. I would bring, kind of what we talked about last week with our remote work setup. Is this cheating if I say the whole setup? Like I want a full adjustable sitting and standing desk with a walking pad and a computer monitor as my remote work setup for my apartment. I'm going to lump those all together as one thing. Maybe a bed. You know, I've had some really horrible mattresses. Somewhere I've even like played around with them and like flipped mattresses in other people's apartments to try to get a more comfortable side of it. So if I could just, that kind of actually ties into our sleep topic. If I could just bring like my own mattress to replace whatever they've put on these beds in other places, and with my blanket and pillows, and then I can put that silk pillowcase right on it and it'll fit in, and that would be a great way to get good sleep wherever I am. So yeah, that was kind of all related to health and lifestyle. So that was a bike to ride around, my remote work setup that I actually don't even have here. That's just a dream if I had a place. But since I don't have a place, it'll go in my bag and my bed.
Okay, so from your answers, which I love that you took advantage of the 3 items and really milked them. But there's no rules to this, right? I didn't give you any parameters. So once again, it's just showing me like the kind of person that you are, which is also very practical. I'm getting a lot of practicality from you, Janessa. Because my 3 answers were a pottery wheel and a kiln.
I love it.
My dog who's at home, because it's impossible for me to travel with him. So I want to be able to take him out when I am able to have him out, and then just put him back in the bag, which will then take him back to my parents while he's in the bag, because it's a magic bag. Once again, there's no rules.
Love it.
And then my 3rd item would be just like this huge wardrobe with all of the clothes that I could ever need for every season. That's just huge, just with everything that's like in my style. And yeah, I just never have to worry about what I'm going to wear ever again.
Ooh,
and those are
okay,
my 3 items.
That's stretching it as well. I didn't even really think of that because I was like, I don't want like one small thing, because I could just bring it. So that's clever. I love that we had such different answers for that.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a really interesting way to get to know people and kind of see how they think and how they operate. So that is all that I have for you. Thank you for playing my game.
Yeah, great question. So we're going to share our number 1 biggest takeaway from today's conversation in just a moment. But first, one last reminder to sign up for our free newsletter, where you'll get more helpful resources like you heard today over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, let us know what you thought about this episode, share any ideas of what you'd like us to talk about, send us an email either at caitlin@zerototravel.com or a message on Instagram at zerototravel. All right. What was your takeaway today, Caitlin?
So my biggest takeaway today, I think, is going back to that idea of, is travel really cheaper than living at home? But I think it's more of, when we talked about the things that we give up, and I talked about the idea of sacrifices and reprioritizing. And what's coming to me now actually is how those priorities and things do start to shift the longer that you travel, and you start realizing what you do want to give up and what you don't want to give up. And, once again, you can always make travel into whatever you want it to be, and it never has to stay the same way. As you grow, the way that you travel can change, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, it's all just about prioritizing what you want this life to look like. And yeah, I think that's my biggest takeaway. How about you, Janessa?
Yeah, I really liked that part of our conversation. So hopefully that resonates with people as well. But I'm going to go in a slightly different direction for my takeaway, actually, partly inspired by your question here of kind of what can you do to make life on the road more comfortable? So maybe you can't bring your whole bed in a Mary Poppins bag, but like we talked about at the top, having maybe that pillowcase and that eye mask and that earplugs and like little things that you can do, little things you can put in your bag, little tweaks you can make to your routine or how you settle into each new place to kind of have that sense of comfort and home so that you're not feeling like you're sacrificing all the time, so that you can have a little bit of a better routine, feel a little bit more grounded in each place you go. So I like that just kind of, I think will get me thinking a little bit more about what are small changes that you can make, even if you can't bring everything with you. So I think that was great to kind of tie that all together. So let us know what you thought of this episode, what you would put in your Mary Poppins bag. I love that question, as well as, is travel actually cheaper than living at home? I thought that was great. So hopefully you enjoy it as well. And before we wrap up, do you have a quote for us today, Caitlin?
Yeah, but before I give you my quote, I do want to say happy birthday, Janessa. Today,
Thank you.
the day that we are recording, it is the day of your birth. So happy birthday to you. I am so glad that we get to work together and that we finally get to, meet up in person in Bansko. I think you're an incredible human and you're just the best. It's been a great, 2 years we've been working together now, something like that. I have absolutely no idea. But the quote
thank you so much
that I am giving today, the quote today is from John Lennon, and it's also his birthday today, ironically. I did this by accident.
I didn't know that. I didn't know we shared a birthday. That's cool.
Yep. That is incredible. Anyway, the quote: "Only by trying on other people's clothes do we find what size we are." All right. Thanks everyone for listening. And feel free to get in touch with us. Like we said, let us know what you think. We would love to hear any feedback you have or any ideas that you have for future episodes. And yeah, we'll see you next month. Ciao.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.